What's going on, y'all? It's your boy, the Gamersician, and welcome to episode number 1 of Memory Lane, the series where we get a little raw, a little uncut, and I talk about some of the memories of great games that I have, and hopefully you guys can relate a little bit to what I'm talking about here. I think the right place to start for this series is with a game that, honestly, I see a little bit of like there was me gaming before and me gaming after this game. There's been a lot of great JRPGs that have impacted my life and the way that I see video games and the way I interact with the medium. Before this game, there was Final Fantasy VII, and I think many kids that were born in the mid to late 80s, growing up in the 90s, had a similar experience to me with Final Fantasy VII. That game changed everything, like it really did. And I feel like looking back, it's hard to imagine that if you weren't there. It really was. It was like, and I'm sure for some of y'all that are a little bit older than me, maybe Final Fantasy VI was this game, but FF7 was just different. It just changed everything. It had this big budget, this big production, and it really got me going into JRPGs heavily. But what's so interesting about Final Fantasy VII and about a lot of other JRPGs at that time, fantasy was the key word, right? There was Final Fantasy. There was Phantasy Star. There was Tales of Fantasy Asia, Tales of Fantasia. You understand what I'm saying? It was a lot more common to see high fantasy, and Final Fantasy VII did buck that trend, but it wasn't until this game that we're sitting here talking about today came out that I really got to see what JRPGs could be like well beyond that conceit, that style. We're talking, of course, about Suikoden, and more specifically, Suikoden II. Now, a big reason I'm talking about this game, I think most of y'all, if you're here on this channel and you have experienced role-playing games the same way I have, I'm sure you already heard the news, but the primary creator of the Suikoden series, the man himself, Yoshitaka Murayama, has passed away. And when I saw that news, man, it's crazy because obviously, I didn't know the guy, but it was hard to not get sad because it felt like a little piece of my childhood passed away. So I thought I'd sit here and I'd talk a little bit about why Suikoden II, and to a lesser extent, Suikoden I, were so important to me. Suikoden II felt like a revelation when it came out, and it's crazy because I got Final Fantasy VII for my 11th birthday back in 1997, and I'm a late September baby, so I saw Suikoden II was coming out September 29th, 1999. So for my 13th birthday, well, a couple days after my 13th birthday, I was able to take the money that I received from family and purchase Suikoden II. And I remember looking at the package, and I know a lot of y'all back in the day, the internet wasn't a thing yet, really. I mean, it was, but you didn't just hop on IGN or GameStop or watch your favorite YouTuber and hear what they thought about a game. You had to it was a lot of thumbing through the shelves and kind of just learning, looking at the box art, looking at the back, and it just felt different. It was a lot of reading magazines, a lot of gathering information in very different ways. And for a lot of us, it was just kind of like, yo, this cover looks dope. But I hadn't played the first Suikoden when I picked up Suikoden II, and I thought it was such a cool looking box, and it spoke to me. And I picked it up, And I remember popping it in, and you could load your old save data from Suikoden 1. And I was like, man, if I like this game, I will go back and play Suikoden 1. And I eventually did. But what made Suikoden 2 so special to me was that it kind of shirked a lot of the fantasy aspects. And of course, you do have runes, you have fights with a fucking vampire man named Necklord, you have fights with all types of other characters like harpies and things like that. But what spoke to me was the story was super grounded. It felt so much different than every other JRPG I had played up to that point, really, outside of like maybe Final Fantasy Tactics. It was these two friends that went through this traumatic experience. They were workers in the army, and they basically get run off. Their camp is attacked, and they are separated. And it would be terrifying. These are young, impressionable military members, and they're just starting out their career in the military, and they get separated, and they mark a rock, and it says, whenever we get through this, let's come back to this spot. And you just know, like, a lot of shit is gonna happen between now and then. And it does, man. And it's a big war struggle that was so different to me than a lot of the other fantasy Japanese role-playing games I was playing at the time. It had a much different feel to it, a much different vibe, more grounded in so many ways. The combat was swift, and you had 6 party members instead of the usual 3 or 4 in most other JRPGs, which makes sense because there are over 108 characters in this game. 108. The Stars of Destiny was such a cool thing because you would scour the landscape and try to find these characters, these very specific characters. And back then you had to have a guide because there was a lot of ways to miss characters, and that could be super frustrating. But generally speaking, a lot of them were pretty easy to understand how to get and things. But to have 108 characters that not only could fight in combat, but also had various other uses at your castle and all these other things that really made this game stand out. There's all these other mini games. There's cooking, there's fishing, and man, the cooking mini game is so fun. I never would have thought that I would love a cooking mini game in a role-playing game, but it was so fun. The game just has everything. It felt action-packed. It felt emotionally moving. We all know the Aerith moment now. It's so swept up in the zeitgeist of gaming that even if you don't know gaming, there's a chance that you know like how our favorite flower girl gets taken care of by a certain psychopathic Muramasa carrying bastard. But oh wait, no, it's the Masamune, yeah. Anyway, it was one of those M swords, but there's a moment like that in this game with a very important character, and I won't spoil anything, but unlike Aerith, you have a little bit of gravity in how it eventually turns out by the actions you take and everything else. So, man, Suikoden II, the music, the gameplay, and just the emotional aspects. I'll never forget when the main character and Jowie, the other character who was run off the cliff at the start of the game, when they first meet back up, man, it's powerful, and it's crazy because it runs very parallel to another favorite JRPG, but happens to be a strategy role-playing game. FF Tactics, the relationship with Ramza and Delita is pretty similar in how the other character kind of goes one way and you go the other. Suikoden II is just a masterpiece, and I've beaten it 6, 7, 8 times. I'm really looking forward to the remaster because I haven't played it in a super long time. I think the last time it was available on a Sony console was maybe the PlayStation Vita, and I think that was only in Japan because I remember thinking like they added all this like widescreen support and all that. And I was like, man, that's so cool, and I was definitely gonna pick it up, but unfortunately I couldn't. So there's not a whole lot of legal ways to play Suikoden II, but I believe that it is Yoshitaka's just absolute best game. It's a shame because you look at his Wikipedia and there aren't a whole lot of games. I know he had a falling out with Konami like in 2002, 2003. So Suikoden III was his last game that he worked on. But after I played the hell out of Suikoden II, finished it 2, 3, 4 times, however many times, I finally went back and I played Suikoden I. And that game came out in late 95, I think, in Japan, and 96 in the States. And it's definitely an early PlayStation JRPG. You can definitely feel that. But the foundation that it set for what was to come with Suikoden II is incredible. And if you play the first game, you actually get additional characters, additional story elements in Suikoden II because you can load the data directly into the second game, which is such a cool touch and something that Konami loved to do, that type of stuff, right? With like Metal Gear Solid and stuff, how you could have it like interact with your memory cards and stuff. It's kind of funny because Konami was really at the forefront of like creative expression in gaming, and who the fuck knows where that went. But Suikoden I is much shorter. It's less refined. It's got less of a heavy story element to it. Still really great game. Definitely something that I suggest. And it's about 20 hours, maybe about 20, 25 hours max. And I would say Suikoden II is about 45. Definitely longer if you really enjoy the side stories and stuff like that. And then Suikoden III is kind of like the dark horse. I feel like Suikoden III gets slept on. I remember playing it on PlayStation 2 and being a little disappointed because it didn't really feel up to par with Suikoden II. And it just felt a little too different. And I feel like if I went back and played it, I'd appreciate it even more. But needless to say, I loved it. It had a Trinity system. And the combat was a little different because you fought in pairs. It was 3 pairs of 2. And that was just a little weird. And it was one of the earlier 3D JRPGs that I played. And it was just a little rough around the edges because of that transition. But it had a lot of really cool ideas. You had 3 different characters that you played their stories through kind of simultaneously. It still had all the war battles, which is a really awesome aspect of Suikoden, where you not only have the standard combat system, but you have the war battles where you play like a strategy role-playing game. And there's also duels, which are a ton of fun, but can be super tough. Unfortunately, after 3, I haven't actually played any other Suikodens. There's a 4, there's a Suikoden Tactics, I believe it's called, and then Suikoden 5, which I really need to get around to. My older brother swears that it's better than 2, which seems impossible to me, but I'm hoping that after the remasters come out and I get the chance to play those again, I can go ahead and look back at Suikoden 5 and see how I feel about that. But yeah, it's just a series that felt so different, felt so unique in its approach. It's very Japanese, but also feels very kind of like the settings have like a little bit of a European feel to it. The music is incredible. I actually own the Suikoden II soundtrack on vinyl. It is a great listen very emotional. There's a lot of great piano ballads and very kind of grounded and settled music that is emotional. It's very emotional. It's very raw. The music isn't over the top, just like most aspects of the game. It's not the spectacle that really makes this game shine. It's the low key and kind of human moments, whether that's with a human character or not, is not really that important. But there's a lot of great character moments throughout Suikoden II that is just absolutely just hits you exactly where you want a game like this to hit you. So Suikoden II is far and away my favorite game of all time. It still is, even though I haven't played it in a long time. The memories I have with that game and the way that it made a 13-year-old me kind of change my view on gaming, and here I am 20 plus years later, still just as in awe with what Yoshitaka and his team at Konami put together through that period. It's damn near a three-peat, honestly. Those first three games are all great in their own way, but the crown jewel is clearly Suikoden II. Now, Yoshitaka Murayama started a studio and crowdfunded a game through Turtle and Bear Studios, I believe is what it's named, called Eiyuden Chronicle. And it is truly the spiritual successor of Suikoden. Because Konami ain't gonna do that shit, so someone else has to. Though I'm hoping if this remake does well enough for them, maybe they'll make a Suikoden 6, but I'm not holding my breath. I mean, a lot of people are still waiting on a lot of different games from Konami to come back. And yeah, they seem so disinterested in making good video games. But anyway, Eiyuden Chronicle looks amazing. And it's sad that he passed away not even like 2.5 months before it comes out. It's due, I believe, April 24th. I backed it on Kickstarter, and it's the first game I've ever backed. I was so excited. I loved their little video to play it up. It was very clever, and it's just really sad that someone with such a kind of a short gaming history, when he finally has his own thing going again, to pass away at a very young age. I believe he was only like in his early to mid 50s at the time of his passing, and it's a shame. I really hope that this creates a new series, that it creates something that reminds people of Suikoden. Even if Konami never does it, we'll have something that feels just like the next Suikoden. And it appears to have all the elements. It's got 108 characters. Of course, they had to change it from stars to not step on Konami's feet. It has gems instead of runes, I believe, like the true rune here on my shirt. It looks like it's got 6-character combat and tons of mini games and the same heart and graphical style of Suikoden, but updated and made modern. I'm sure there's lots of quality of life stuff that's just gonna make playing it feel so great to newcomers and people that can enjoy what is next for the series. So all in all, Suikoden is just one of those super special series. It's sad because it didn't sell particularly well initially, and it is one of those cult classics, but to be there when it happened and to have an original copy that I unfortunately no longer have. I used to have a day one copy of Suikoden II, and it hurts my soul that I don't own it anymore. But anyway, regardless of how it's sold, regardless of its wider notoriety, within the video game sphere, Suikoden II is known to be one of the most emotionally impactful and one of the best built Japanese role-playing games ever. It's not perfect. There are a lot of characters that are very easy to miss. There are times where you end up in battles that can be very tough if you haven't planned ahead and know that you might need multiple parties. There's definitely some rough edges. I think the translation could use probably another once over, but that was pretty common in those mid to late 90s JRPGs. They weren't always great. So I hope that this remake is phenomenal and it brings the Suikoden series to the forefront once again to a new generation of player. And if you haven't played it yet, I could not suggest any game, not even a single other game, more than I can suggest Suikoden 2. So go out and support Suikoden, even though it's Konami. Make sure that you check out Eiyuden Chronicle, and rest in peace to one of the unsung heroes of the role-playing game space. Somebody that, regardless of if I ever had the chance to really even know anything about this guy, it's just a powerful reminder that if you create something great and unique and that stands out, you can just continue to live on forever through that work. And I wish Yoshitaka Murayama, his family, his friends, and everyone that works with him at his studio the best. I'm hoping that this next game, Eiyuden Chronicle, is a huge success because it can only mean more and better things going forward. So thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this kind of new format where I sit and I just chat, let me know down below. I just want to share a little bit more of my own gaming story with you guys, and I would love to hear your thoughts and if you have any great memories with this series, and what is your favorite Suikoden game? How did Yoshitaka touch you through his game series and through his art? All of that, I would love to know down below. Thank you again for tuning in, and yeah, lots of great stuff coming very soon. So I appreciate each and every one of y'all. Thanks again. Peace.